Welcome to a new Craft a DM video. So, question number 1. I'm new to DMing. Where do I even start? This question is so in-depth that I'll just try to cover the basics. Essentially, remember one rule. Everyone is there to have fun, including you. A good first step in this direction would be to not play against the players. First off, it's far too easy to kill the players. You control the world, but with great power comes great responsibility. Now, you may find yourself being irritated that the players seem to disarm all the traps, or they metagame too much and bypass all the difficulty. Occasionally that happens. The key here, and listen closely, is not to get frustrated. So they disarmed that trap or saw an ambush coming a mile away and feigned surprised or something, and in turn they surprised the ambushers themselves. That's okay. If you want to ramp up the difficulty, that's fine too. Maybe have one of those ambushers run away halfway through the battle so the people that were trying to kill the party know to send more later on. Want to seem cool? When the party does eventually get attacked by the same group again, allude to this. Have a brief dialogue before or during the attack itself. Not all enemies should do this though. Limit your actions to what you think a certain creature might do. Quick tip number 2. Be more fluid in your storytelling and let the players help you build the world. Just because you control the world doesn't mean that the players will do exactly what you want to progress the story. If the players want to go do some side quests, then create some side quests. Maybe make that side quest they're on to coincide with the main quest, whether it be by information, places, or items. I call this fluid railroading. It works because the group is telling the story together and doing things they all want to do, not just what you laid out beforehand. This will also help you create a more believable environment. Maybe the players will take a liking to a quickly made up village with the quirky NPCs that you just threw in there real quick. Quick tip number 3. Know the basic rules for gameplay. Now, some rule sets are more in depth than others and take a long time before you know all the ins and outs. And a player might have more knowledge than you about a certain attack, but you know why? It's because that their character can do said certain attack, and that they've done their homework on it religiously. Now, if something comes into play and the wording is weird, explain to the group that here's how you see it, and we'll run it like this for now until the end of the session when you can get more feedback on it in forums or asking other DMs or asking the players about it in depth, so it doesn't take away from the gameplay. Quick tip number 4. Another simple rule. Say yes instead of no. There are tons of things that the rules don't cover. A player asks, I'm looking at this necklace intently before I put it on. Anything weird about it? Well, not really. Well, now there is. Have them make a perception check, and in the meantime think of something cool. Maybe there's a small inscription that's a saying among cultists that belong to a certain cult, or coordinates to some long-lost treasure trove, or a small curse is bestowed upon the person who wears it. Or a player says, I'm going to run alongside the wall and go over and behind my opponent. Okay, make a high DC Dex or Strength check. And if they fail, then they fall and provoke an attack. That's much more interesting than them not being able to get behind someone for an attack. There should be a stipulation to this rule though. If you, as a DM, don't think it's feasible for their character to do said action, then they can't do it. However, you should also explain why their character cannot. Quick tip number 5. Before the campaign begins, briefly explain what the players can expect. Now, you wouldn't want a druid in the party if the campaign mainly takes place in this big city. You know, it just really wouldn't fit, and the player themselves wouldn't really be able to get into that role. And finally, be okay with being bad. It's hard work, and if you're first starting out, things might not make sense to a veteran player or group. The more you play, the more you improve if you try. Don't feel discouraged. My first game that I ran wasn't all that great. I felt the premise was solid, but I made a lot of mistakes in getting the party to go where I wanted them to or where I needed them to. That being said, I think I put in a doppelganger in almost every campaign I've been in to lure the player's trust in some fashion and then violently betray it. Just because your first few games might be bad doesn't mean that you didn't have good ideas or that people didn't have fun playing it. Question number 2. Where do I start if I want to create a homebrew campaign? So you want to create a homebrew campaign, whether it's out of interest or you're trying to save some money. The first thing you should do is really think of a premise. You probably already got this one down since you want to create a homebrew in the first place. A good thing to do though is look at past stories. A wise man once said that all writing is rewriting. Things are going to have parallels, and that's fine. Even if you come up with something completely on your own, it'll have influences from somewhere even if you don't realize this. A good example would be when I was running the beginning of Horde of the Dragon Queen. There's this part where the dragon attacks. Well, I changed that encounter up big time by introducing a magical ballista that could be fired by pouring your arcane energies into it. Now, this draws parallels to a lot of stories and archetypes. To be honest, I didn't even realize that at the time. I just thought it was something that would be cool. Now, it wasn't until later that a viewer said that he thought of The Hobbit when he watched this part of the session. If you want to look at a grander scale, then my homebrew Heroes of Legend has a coming of age story. Sure, there are wrinkles thrown in here and there to make it interesting, but the point is, don't be afraid to look at the past to build the present. Here's a few books or stories I'd look into if you want to be inspired to build a premise. The Dark Tower series, the Mistborn series, Stormlight Archives series, Monkey, also known as Journey to the West, the Odyssey, the Song of Roland, To Kill a Mockingbird, Dune, Brave New World, or 1984. If any of you viewers have suggestions, type them out in the comments below. So, let's say you have a premise and you need a world for this to be in. There's 3 ways you can do this, and really only 3. The first 2 are quite obvious. You either take an existing setting or you create your own. The third option would be to blend the 2 together. Now, that last option is also the easiest of the 3 if you know nothing about existing settings and you really don't want to invest the time to create a whole new setting all on your own. So first, you choose a place that you've heard of, let's say Neverwinter or Baldur's Gate. Boom! Now you can implement that in your world. Then you can start building the surrounding regions based on that. Pretty simple, and you don't have to expend the effort to learn all about the Forgotten Realms. And you are free to create your own lore and towns in the world that you want to have. So now we have a premise and a general setting that this takes place in. The only thing you need now is to expand the plot and set up smaller towns. Create a list of interesting characters. These don't need to be fully built NPCs of stat blocks and abilities, just a name and a short description about them. Maybe a few of them are more integral to the plot, and you should fill out more information on those NPCs. And there you have it. Your own homebrew setting. Of course you'll need to have maps, but you don't really need to be a master cartographer to create one. As stated in the earlier question, let the players help build the world around you. To go a step further, try to create the campaign a session or 2 at a time. This way you can gauge the players' responses to other incidents, and it can help you shape the campaign to fit the premise that you came up with. Well, that's all for this video. Again, feel free to leave your tips or questions down in the comments below. I've had a pretty good response to these videos, so I'll keep doing them as long as there are questions asked. If you enjoyed this video, then feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. Till next time.